When Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, a man of 10,000 a year, proposed to Elizabeth Bennet, a country gentleman's daughter with no dowry and no title, it was shocking enough. But what truly stunned everyone, then and now, was that she refused him. Could a woman of her standing really turn down a match so far above her station? Was that even possible in Regency, England? In this episode, we'll explore just how radical that moment truly was. Because behind the elegance of empire waist gowns and candlelit balls, marriage in the Regency era wasn't a romantic ideal, it was a social contract. A system built not for love, but for lineage, property, and power. In a world where primogeniture kept estates in the hands of eldest sons, and daughters were all but invisible in law, marriage often meant survival, especially for families like the Bennets with 5 daughters and no sons to inherit. Join us as we step beyond the drawing rooms and into the inner workings of marriage in the Regency era, its rules, risks, and the rare rebellions that changed everything.
5 daughters, no sons, and Longbourn tied away from any of them. Do you know what that means? I don't just want them married, I want them secure. I want them to have titles, homes, futures that no one can take away. A mother wants her girls to thrive, not merely survive.
At root, the entire edifice of Regency marriage was built on motive and necessity. Land, wealth, and name were tied tightly to inheritance laws. Under primogeniture and the entail system, large estates passed, intact, to the eldest son. Younger sons received allowances or had to make their own fortunes, and daughters, unless they brought private fortune through dowry, had no claim to property. In a society where women rarely owned land, could not vote, and were barred from professions of status, marriage became the primary, often sole, path to financial security, social standing, and a legally recognized home.
A woman unmarried at 25? A spinster, an embarrassment. I will not have Jane or Lizzie left with nothing when Mr. Bennet inevitably... Well, when he is gone. They must be placed properly and advantageously. I'm not asking for fantasy, I'm securing their future.
The pressure was real and relentless. Becoming a governess or companion offered little autonomy, and even those roles carried a stigma. Marriage, when well arranged, promised not only shelter, but a transfer of social identity. Refusing an offer wasn't merely a matter of pride, it could mean risking poverty. Families like the Bennets thus sent their daughters into what became known as the marriage market, a competitive, highly codified arena where matches were brokered, evaluated, and pursued.
Books never argue, but then neither do they pay the rent. I suppose one could say that even virtue must wear a proper gown.
And so begins the public phase, the display, the introduction, the aggregation of eligible prospects. Before love could take root, people had to be seen. That is where the marriage market and society's seasons came in. The union of families did not happen in private. The season transformed cities like London into a bustling market for matches. Nobility and gentry gathered in an orchestrated flow of balls, dinners, presentations, and assemblies. Debutantes were presented, formally introduced, at court, their names entered into society's ledger. For provincial gentry and professional families, similar introductions happened at county assemblies and lesser balls, all designed to pool possibilities. The purpose was pragmatic, to ensure fortunes, titles, and influence remained aligned with compatible partners, and, to borrow the language of the era, appropriate matches were made.
It's all very dazzling, yes. I didn't know that society required such precise scheduling for affection. But if one is to find a companion, one might as well do it properly.
A dowry, a respected name, the right air of accomplishment, these could tip the scales. Young women cultivated accomplishments such as music, languages, needlework, and polite conversation to to signal both refinement and worthiness. Parents, tactically, made sure their daughters were visible and desirable without appearing too forward. The marriage market was a continual balance of presentation and restraint.
Every glance is a message. Every dance is an investment. One must not simply participate. One must manage perception.
Yet, despite the spectacle, competition was fierce. Eligible bachelors were limited. The imbalance between hopeful daughters and potential matches magnified anxiety. Expectations, reputations, and family fortunes rode on conversation, a shared waltz, an introduced name. Before any courtship could begin in earnest, there remained the essential first step: entry into society itself.
Parading affection like merchandise. Too much display dulls the truth. But I admit, beneath the social choreography, there are still interesting individuals.
And for those daughters of the middling gentry like the Bennets, that entry looked less like royal presentation and more like a careful debut at a local assembly. Formal introduction into society meant more than a party. For young women, it signified eligibility, public visibility as potential partners. Aristocratic daughters might be presented at St. James's Palace. In towns like Meryton, assemblies served the same function, to show, not tell, that these young ladies had arrived. For families without deep aristocratic ties, doing so well mattered. Displaying accomplishments, dancing properly, playing the pianoforte, conversing gracefully, was not vanity, it was currency.
16 and already the star of every assembly. Officers practically fall over themselves to ask me for a dance.
I worry about every misstep, but Mama insists practice makes perfect.
Accomplishments refine a young lady's character. If one must be observed, one should be worthy of admiration.
I'd rather be remembered for my wit than my ribbons.
Mama says we should shine brightly, but never outshine others.
Yet beyond this polished world lies another reality.
For those of us below stairs, marriage isn't wrapped in such finery. True freedom in choosing when and whom to marry belongs to us. Our parents rarely interfere, not because they don't care, but because there's little dowry or land to pass on. Asking their permission is often just a formality.
For working-class women, economic independence was limited but essential. They laboured before and after marriage. Their contributions, raising poultry, sewing household goods, were vital to family survival. Unlike the gentry, they had no grand balls to attend. Instead, marriage was a partnership built on shared labour and communal support.
Before marriage, we worked hard. After, we worked harder. Men and women together saved for furniture, cloth, and everyday necessities. The village often helped too. Neighbours pitching in money or goods to give the young couple a proper start.
In the lower classes, marriage was a practical alliance for survival and mutual support, unburdened by strict social rituals but full of real daily cooperation.
It might lack the sparkle, but our freedom to choose and build our own lives gives us strength. We rely on ourselves to make a home, and though life is hard, our hearts are steady.
No matter the class, entering society and becoming seen marks the beginning of a marriage journey. In Regency courtship, affection had to navigate a maze of codified rules. Men led the pursuit. Women were to preserve modesty. Couples could not be alone. They could not write private letters freely, nor call each other by first names until an engagement permitted that intimacy. Dances were a controlled stage for flirting. 2 dances maximum with the same partner in some settings. Glances carried meaning, and a touch, even gloved, was layered with implication. Any breach or rumour of impropriety could tarnish a woman's reputation for years, making the line between attention and scandal perilously thin.
He asked for dance after dance, but even that felt like a question. I'm learning how meaning hides in the smallest gestures.
I don't know the proper language of the eyes, but I know I look for her again and again. Is that what courtship is? Trying not to frighten someone away by being too obvious?
While those of similar status pursued each other strictly within these frameworks, class imposed another barrier. The idea of marrying across class lines between country gentry and higher nobility was frowned upon, bringing pressure and interference from those who guarded lineage.
A gentleman must consider his station. To match without proper pedigree is to threaten the order.
Yet the rules could also produce tension and self-questioning. Elizabeth, outspoken and aware, bristled against formality while still navigating it.
Imagine being expected to wait for invitation to speak your mind. Still, the rules give you something to push against.
Scandal? Oh, I do adore when people whisper. It means I'm noticed.
Sometimes the neat structures of courtship intersected with family strategy. Blood could complicate and, in some cases, legitimize connections. Not all matches were the result of elaborate market maneuvering or romantic charm. In the world of inheritance and property, cousin marriages were a common and socially acceptable way to keep wealth within extended kin. Unlike marrying a deceased spouse's sibling, a relationship entangled in religious and legal prohibitions, marrying a cousin presented fewer surprises in lineage and was often seen as preserving family stability.
As heir presumptive of Longbourn, it is both prudent and befitting that I consider one of my dear cousins. My intentions are rooted in duty and the proper ordering of familial alliance.
Prudent, perhaps. Cosy, certainly. But I prefer a future not built on the echo of obligation.
For women, rejection carried risk. To turn down a suitor like Mr. Collins was to defy convention and potentially forego security. Elizabeth's refusal was simultaneously a stance of personal integrity and one that left uncertain ground beneath her feet. Once someone cleared that personal and social threshold, whether through cautious approval, strategic kinship, or defiant choice, the next phase arrived: proposals, negotiations, and the binding assurances of engagement. Regency matrimonial practice combined emotion with strict legal scaffolding. The formal age for marriage was low, 12 for girls and 14 for boys. Yet those under 21 required parental consent. Proposals were far more than declarations of love, they were intended contracts. Accepting one triggered negotiations over settlements, dowries, and the drafting of marriage contracts that detailed the transfer of rights, the security a widow could rely upon, the jointure, and the economic framework of the union.
I turned down Mr. Collins without a flinch. Darcy's proposal. Well, it demanded that I see the truth beneath pride. Standards are not stubbornness, they are survival.
Engagement granted intimacy. Once properly betrothed, couples could address each other by first name, spend more time together without the same level of supervision, and be seen in public with a new legitimacy. Yet engagements were social contracts. Breaking one, especially by the woman, could damage reputations, though she retained the theoretical right to refuse. Secret engagements were dangerous, for they upset negotiated alliances and could breed scandal.
It is not merely the joining of two people. It is a merging of houses, of obligations, of expectations. I sign these not out of romance, but because I understand survival.
And then there were cases that ignored every rule: elopements. Scotland's Gretna Green, beyond the stricter English marriage laws, offered a loophole. Couples could marry without parental consent. But the cost was heavy. Family honour could be wounded for years.
Gretna Green sounded like freedom, and maybe a little like danger. But isn't that what it means to be young? He's charming, and I am irresistible. What's the worst that can happen?
Engaged, settled, or scandalised, what followed was the final public ritual, the wedding. Unlike the spectacle of the season, weddings themselves were often intimate and restrained. Regency ceremonies were usually held in parish churches between morning and midday, with only close family and friends in attendance. Brides wore their best gowns, not necessarily white, and presented themselves as newly formed households. The groom provided a carriage, and the bride received new wardrobes from her parents to signify her transition from daughter to wife.
2 daughters married, Jane so composed, Elizabeth so, well, fitting. Longbourn's future is secured. I could faint from relief.
Marriage altered legal identities. A woman's rights, property, autonomy were subsumed into her husband's, with only the prearranged jointure offering a safety net if she became a widow. Yet within those structures, some relationships grew into partnership, affection, even mutual respect.
To gain some measure of freedom through a bond that binds. It's paradoxical. But perhaps the truest alliances make space for each to breathe.
From anxious calculations to the quiet moments of choosing one another, marriage in the Regency was simultaneously practical and deeply personal.
If you've learned nothing else today, remember, 5 daughters keep every scheme in check. They're a trial, a lesson, and, evidently, the reason a man learns to be humble.
And a mother never stops worrying. But when the right names are spoken and the right match is made, oh, a family breathes easier.
In the Regency era, marriage was law, livelihood, strategy, and sometimes salvation. It shaped destinies, structured societies, and asked individuals to weigh love against obligation, independence against security. The Bennets lived those tensions openly, through joy, embarrassment, rebellion, and quiet defiance. 2 centuries later, their world may look distant, but the hopes, anxieties, and complexities behind every union remain familiar. Who gets to choose and on what terms? Those questions still echo.